Good afternoon. My name's Kevin Graham, and here I am with your daily bulletin. I'm joined by, as usual, Colin Watt and Brian Dengan on a Wednesday, and I think we need to actually have a wee heart to heart, to start off with. To start off this bulletin, that's a Celtic dad joke there for a lot of people who won't get that. Colin, it looks like somebody's found the chip and pin for the company credit card and they've started making some signings. What do you think about Joe Hart and James McCarthy joining, as we've got on the banner, Ange's Revolution?
Ange's Revolution, eh? It's starting to take shape, put it that way. We're starting to see the players coming into the building. Look, when you take this and you look at the two signings, they're two very experienced heads adding to a squad which is very young, very inexperienced. You can say there's players like McGregor and Christie that have been there for years, but when you look at the back four, we did need some extra experienced heads into the building, and bringing these two guys in is definitely something that we were looking to do. Joe Hart, I think if he managed to get any sort of form out of Joe Hart, the way that he used to play for Man City, even spells that he had at Spurs and the kind of cup games that he had, he's a fantastic addition to the squad. I'm excited to see him playing. It does look as if he'll probably make his debut on Thursday night. McCarthy, it's just about how quick we get him up to speed, because he's been around the Premier League now for a number of years, and it's always been a case of he's been kind of struggling with injury worries, but when he has been fit, he's been the first pick in there, whether it be at Crystal Palace, at Everton. He's always been the one that they turn to and bring him back into the squad as soon as he's available. So that is good, and it adds depth to our midfield, which was lacking before his signing. I think when you look at it, you've had someone like McGregor, Sorrow, Turnbull, and that was the three that you knew were going to start because you didn't think anyone else was going to step into those positions. Now, McCarthy coming in, is that going to push Sorrow out the team, or is it going to make Sorrow try and improve himself and get even better? And that's what you're looking for. We're looking for players that's going to come in, whether they're first choice or not, they make the squad better overall and they make this competition for places. And that's exactly what these two signings do.
We haven't heard from James McCarthy yet, but we heard from Joe Hart last night, Brian, and it was a very impressive interview, I found it impressive anyway. Don't know if anybody else.
I think it was. I'm just glad we're getting the players in to join the Ange Revolution, and it's not an Ange Revolt because he's fed up not getting the players in he wants. So that's a good sign at least. But one of the things that impressed me about Joe Hart was, and I'd said before, I wasn't overly excited when we were linked with him, but the fact he's took the pay cut, he's dropped into 15 grand a week. He signed for 3 years, and he looked like he had the bit between his teeth. He looked like he's got something to prove, and what a stage to prove it on. You know, if we get fans back into Parkhead, get it filled, it's going to be great, and I think he'll thrive under that. I compared it yesterday to the sort of almost Scott Sinclair effect. You know, player that was, very highly rated but drifted off a bit, and maybe sort of rejuvenated at Celtic Park. And I think James McCarthy's a really good piece of business. Mm-hmm. Again, signing for 4 years shows he's committed. He's not coming up here for a holiday until a better offer comes up. Obviously, Celtic supporter, always done well for Ireland, done well, as Colin said, when he's played for Palace and Everton. And I think the only worry is making sure he stays fit and stays injury free. If we can do that, I think that's a really solid addition to the midfield. And I'm hoping his influence in the team will inspire guys like Sorrow and show him, because I think Sorrow's got all the potential in the world. He's still only 22, but he's very rash, as we spoke about. And I think McCarthy's got a much calmer head when he's winning the ball back. So hopefully Sorrow can learn from him. So all in, exciting, and just need another 6 players and we're good to go.
See, on that, Brian, you're talking about Sorrow being quite rash. I think the biggest problem we've had with Sorrow is the fact that we didn't try to integrate him sooner. We didn't have, like last season and maybe even the season before when Scott Brown was there, that was the perfect time that you'd say, right, Sorrow, you get the last 30 minutes when Scott Brown's tiring. You bring him on, you get him up to speed with Scottish football. Instead, we kind of threw him in at the deep end. And at first, he started to impress. He was very highly rated when he came in. And then when we started to rely on him week after week, we started to see the kind of flaws in his game where he'll chase the guy down, but he's very susceptible to giving the foul away. He's very susceptible to probably picking up a yellow card. Things like that, we could have integrated him in more gently and played him 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, gave him the odd game here and there. Instead, we kind of relied on him, and having that experienced head in McCarthy, I think, will help grow Sorrow's game as well, to the point where he can start to work on those flaws and he can improve himself. So as you say, maybe in a year or two's time, he is a better all-round player.
I think the reaction on ACSOM has been fairly positive to both signings. And me and Boise spoke about it last night on Screamer Celica. But there's always this coming in, and it's from S on YouTube. I wonder what say, if any, Ange had in the two signings. We've seen this movie before. I think S is trying to get over the opinion that over the last decade or so, we've seen an accountant playing football manager when it comes to making football decisions. At the moment, we've got a guy who does rugby trying to sign football players. Do you think that there's any? Do you think S has got a point there, Colin? Are we still seeing an accountant? We're still seeing an accountant playing football manager here.
We spoke last week about the importance of getting signings in, and we were saying on the Wednesday bulletin last week, we have to look at UK targets as well as international targets, because we're in the kind of process stage of, we don't just need the first teamer, we need backup first teamers as well. That's how much of the rebuild we had to get into it. The fact that these are available to Ange, you've got to assume that he is the final say on it. He's not going to sign a guy that he doesn't want part of his team. As Lawrence Reed here says on YouTube, Ange says he's delighted with the signings. Of course he is, because he needs to bring in more players into the squad. Bringing in someone like Joe Hart and someone like James McCarthy adds the depth to that squad. If he's interested in signing guys like Buta, like Lovrich, like other players that we've been linked with, that's going to take time for them to bed into the squad, and he doesn't have that time at the minute because the start hasn't been that impressive. He needs to start getting wins on the board and bringing guys in from the UK that he can bring into the squad without having to quarantine. That gives him the best chance of doing that.
Brian, I'm going to bring up Brown Warrior here. Does anyone seriously think Hart and McCarthy would be a done deal without Desmond's input? So this goes back last week to the story. It was leaked to a newspaper saying that Desmond was getting more involved. So instead of it being an accountant that's doing the football deals, we've now got a multi-billionaire racehorse owner, airport owner now actually doing the deals.
Sold the airport, Kev. Sold the airport.
He used to be a former airport owner then, but he still owns plenty of racehorses, seemingly, if those tweets are anything to go by. Brian, what do you think? Do you think this is guys of Hart and McCarthy's quality are only at Celtic because Big Double D is now involved?
Double D, I certainly can be a tit at times. I think that what you have to look at is, we were talking about, are these Ange signings? We know that Celtic are using last year's scouting manual. We know that. We know there's not going to be a recruitment director in. We know they're basically scouting the players or giving him files on players they've already had. So I think it's Ange's choices out of Celtic selection, if that makes sense. So I know people are kind of thinking because Joe Hart was linked to last year, or it's the club making these decisions to get players in. No, Ange. I think he's probably picking from the selection they're giving him, and that's something obviously we hope longer term is going to change. In terms of Desmond getting involved, look, the thing about it is, whoever's doing the deals, it's no the CEO and it's no Ange. So whoever's doing them, you've got to assume that they're really in charge of the negotiation part of it. I doubt that Desmond is coming in and saying, that's who you're getting, Liam. That would surprise me. Ange doesn't seem like the type of character who you're going to tell to sit down and do what he's told. So I'd be surprised. What you may have found, maybe with the McCarthy, is that Desmond might have decided to top up his wages if Celtic couldn't afford it. Something like that, maybe. He'd done that before with Roy Keane, I think. And Robbie Keane, I think, as well. So maybe that's kind of, but the reality is we don't know. It's all conjecture just now. I say, and the positives are Ange seems happy with the two signings, and as we said, there are two signings coming in. The squad's looking a bit more like it, although we are still short especially in full-back position particularly, and there's the big question mark over Eddie. So still a lot to be positive about the Desmond stuff and Ange's players. I don't think it's worth getting drawn into because the reality is we just don't know.
I don't think it's worth getting drawn into either, but it's a comment from one of the viewers. But what I would say is, sitting here on a Wednesday afternoon, I find it extremely fanciful that Dermot Desmond would phone up Joe Hart and say, "Do you want to come to Celtic, Joe?" I just find that completely fanciful. But if he's maybe brought in some negotiators, maybe his son's involved at some point, because who at the club has got experience in negotiating deals now? Don Mackay has got experience in negotiating deals, business deals. A football player's contract's completely different from business. Who else is left there? So you've got the company secretary, Michael Nicholson, who's been there for years and was probably heavily involved under Peter Wall. So I've met Michael on many occasions, and he doesn't seem to be the type of guy that'd be able to talk Joe Hart into coming to Celtic. He doesn't seem to be the type of guy that would talk James McCarthy into coming to Celtic. So there is somebody doing that, and whoever it is. I mean, Postecoglou, by Joe Hart's conversation last night, I don't think he's spoken to Postecoglou, Colin. That's what it seems. That's what you got from the interview.
It doesn't sound like it. What were you saying, Brian?
He just called him the manager, didn't he?
He did.
To be fair, I've heard some people on this channel struggle to pronounce Postecoglou, so I'll give him a benefit of doubt on that one. I've got to bring up a tweet I seen last night, and it's the clip from that video. See when he's sitting there with Stevie Woods and they're looking at the laptop. Derek Watson put a tweet out last night. I retweeted it, and he says that what he was actually showing him was a clip where Stevie Woods had to go out and play outfield for Motherwell because they were that short on injuries. I played 5 minutes up front. This is how you can do it. No, look, what was interesting coming out of that Joe Hart interview was the fact that he has heard of Stevie Woods before because of probably his connections with the Scotland team and the friendship that he's got with Fraser Forster. So Joe's sounds as if he is doing his homework, and he knows what he's coming up to do. Now he's a guy that really needs to try and revive his career. He's kind of went through a bit of a flat spell at Spurs, at Burnley. Even his loan spell at Torino wasn't overly inspiring. The fact that he's coming up here, he's kind of took the cut in wages. I know if they'll say, well, I'd love to be on 15 grand a week, so would I. But for a footballer of Joe Hart's kind of stature to drop down to 15 grand a week is a fair jump for him. He could have easily moved to the MLS or went to China and picked up 10 times that. But he's decided for the benefit of his career to make that move up to Scotland. He's got a lot to offer to the team. And if Stevie Woods can work with him and get these things out of his game that seem to have been creeping in over the last few years, I think we've made an astute signing there.
Robert Ingram disagrees, Colin. Hart should be a 1 year stopgap. Even Ange is on a year's contract. Brian, what's your take on that? For me, I disagree with that because Joe Hart is only 34, which is extremely young for a goalkeeper. And the fact that he's been willing to sign for 3 years, for me, shows a bit of commitment. On the other side of that comment, Callan88 comes in and says, I hope we don't go down the EPL players route again, i.e. Ayeti Duffy, because that's just lazy scouting for me. Though he does think the Hart signing is going to be a turning point. Two different views on Joe Hart there, eh? Well, what's your thoughts of the two commenters there? What do you think?
So the first one, I think if we'd have put on a 1 year deal, we'd have been shooting ourselves in the foot. So imagine you put me on a 1 year deal and he has a brilliant season, like Fraser Forster, levels of success, he's rejuvenated again. You can guarantee that clubs down south will start to look at him again. At least if we've got him on a 4 year deal, it shows his commitment to the fans, it gives him a bit of security, and if he does play well, there still might be a big move in him. So, we could cash in at some point if that's the case. But I think, 34 years old is nothing for a keeper. To be honest, some outfield players are getting older as well. So I think age is just a number. In terms of Ange, the rolling contract thing is something we've done for a while, and so I wouldn't say it's a 1 year deal. It's not as if he's going to get it's the rolling contract that Lennon said before, and I think it was only Rodgers that didn't have that. Am I right?
It was Rodgers originally had that contract, then he signed a 4-year deal?
3 or 4 year deal.
It was a 3-year deal.
That's the other comment about the players going in the EPL route. I get where that tweet's coming from, or that comment's coming from, because I get the sentiment behind it. But what you also have to understand is, it's Colin said earlier, it's quicker to get these players in and right into the team. There's no the quarantine period, there's no the adjustment period, there's no travelling and sitting in a hotel for 10 days before you can start. So in this instance, I think they should have probably done this sooner, if I'm honest, and looked at getting players for either for the SPL or the EPL or Championship or something, getting that in first, populating the team with that. I see where he's coming from, but I don't quite agree. Although I do think the Hart signing may be a turning point.
I tell you what, sorry, Kevin, you mentioned the part there about getting it done sooner. I think, honestly, until maybe, I don't know if it would be the Midtjylland game, I think Ange was happy to go with the 3 goalkeepers that we had. I don't think that was one of the areas that he was looking to strengthen, as much as we said we think we needed a goalkeeper. So I reckon in the space of less than a week, they've brought in Joe Hart. As much as he's been linked before, I don't think there was the sort of urgency there from Celtic to say we need a goalkeeper. After those performances, he's looked at it and went, the West Ham game probably included, and went, aye, they need another head in there, and the deal's been done. So in relative terms, it wasn't the longest transfer that we've had to kind of go through at Celtic.
What I'll say is, I'll ask Callan 88 to come back on when we start raking through Man City's sock drawer in the last week, in the last week of the transfer window, to try and get loan signings and to see what he says. See what he says then. Reece 4, and that, for me, this is the main thing about the signing of Joe Hart, is he's going to bring the experience, and I think the defence is going to benefit for that experience, that presence, and dare we say it, that arrogance behind him, because he does seem a big confident character. And what I really love, confident but humble. His words about Callum McGregor last night, and even Ange's words at the weekend about Callum McGregor, for me, really show that Callum McGregor has actually stepped up to the captain's mantle of Celtic Football Club brilliantly, Brian?
Aye, absolutely. I think McGregor's, although we can be critical of some of the performances so far, but I think McGregor's played consistently pretty well. I think he looks more vocal than ever. And, maybe we said, he's not going to be a Scott Brown type vocalist and stuff. Maybe with Scott Brown no there, he's actually come out of shell a wee bit. And the fact that, Joe Hart has said that he take the time out to sort of give him the lay of the land and not put him in his place, but show him the way to do things. I think that's really good qualities for the captain, and he seems to be thriving. So I absolutely really positive where Calmack's concerned.
Well, what do you think of Callum McGregor over the last couple of weeks, Colin?
He's someone who is sort of getting his bearings as the captain. He's not someone who immediately jumps in, but what he does seem to be is he seems to be someone that gets on very well with players very quickly, and I think you saw that even in the Scotland squad. When you looked at the guys kind of talking about the Scotland squad, they always spoke about McGregor as the experienced guy, but someone that got on with everybody, someone that they could always turn to, and I think that's good characteristics to have as a captain. Now, we saw the Scott Brown side of it, where he was very vocal on the park, he was kind of controlling the game, as almost like the manager on the field. I think Callum McGregor will grow into that. But if you get everybody on side, that's the first thing you have to do as a captain. You have to be the guy that the players can turn to. If they've got any issues, you say, right, I'm going to go to Callum about that before they go to the manager. Mm-hmm. So having that and getting the respect, even of guys like Joe Hart, who's only just signed, is a great first step. The next one I think the fans will want to see is him being that kind of guy that's arguing with the referee, protecting his players on the park. But that'll come. It's still very early into his captaincy.
I'm going to bring a comment from Gary. Obviously, the dark side is strong in this one. He says, love watching this crackpot parody show. He obviously hasn't seen Screamer Celica then. Endless entertainment. Cannot wait for the first Old Firm game of the season. Either can we, Gary, because nothing will change after it. We'll still be the good guys and you'll still be the bad guys and still be rotten to the core. So, thanks for watching, by the way. Subscribe. So, Colin, you mentioned us getting signings in quicker. Do you actually think that Dom Mackay's maybe realising that he's got 4 weeks to go before everything starts getting put on him? Because, like, he's got 4 weeks. We've got a transfer window of 4 weeks. And if we haven't got the bullets and the guns to mount a challenge this season, then surely it is on Mackay's head, because that means he's been in the job 8 weeks by the end of the transfer window. And if Ange is still moaning about not getting reinforcements in by the end of the 4 weeks, is Mackay maybe beginning to think, by the way, we need to start getting things done here because this is on my head? And just taking responsibility. Is it time for Dom to actually take responsibility?
I mean, Ange couldn't be any more vocal in what he's been saying over the games. He's been talking about getting guys in. He's saying, maybe I've not been clear enough. Maybe I've not spoke my words to the board clear enough. Maybe I need to tell them again and again and again that I need guys in. And fair play to the board. They seem to have managed to get a couple of guys in now. But if that's not as much as what Ange needs to continue this, because Ange is winning the fans. He's definitely winning the fans over. The Scottish media already are turning on him. That means he's doing the job right. They're already saying, oh, he's lost it, oh, he's done that. No, he's doing the job right because he's coming out and he's having a go at them. And he's been honest to the fans since day one. And I think the fans really respect that, and they're definitely behind him. What you need to do now is make sure that Mackay understands that, because he's got a manager there who's very well thought of. And if he was the one to walk away from that situation, it would then fall onto Mackay. So he's got to give him, as you said, as many bullets in the arsenal as he needs to get this job done, and then let the talking be done on the park. And so far, even though it hasn't been the best start, Ange is definitely winning the fans over. Now it's time for him, once he gets back, to do it on the park.
Scott Howe, I'm just going to bring this up, a bit of Bonnie Tyler for a Wednesday afternoon, a total eclipse of Joe Hart. That's a great comment, I love that. Brian, I mean, what do you think? Do you think Dom's beginning to realise now that there's one thing that he's got to get sorted, and that's the playing staff? And he knows he'll maybe get a bit of leeway with all the other stuff. It's interesting to hear Ange already shouting out for new sports science, better conditioning to get brought into the club. And we don't know, as you said yesterday, you made a great point yesterday that there's agencies that deal with this type of stuff. I didn't care anything about recruitment. If I just go for job interviews and didn't get them. So there's agencies that go for this type of stuff. So do you think he's maybe put this to an agency going, we read this, and they're working in the background? Because I don't know how long it takes to do a transfer deal. I haven't got a clue. But surely he's not sitting all day like just hitting F5, refreshing your laptop, hoping something changes. As he's staring, surely he's just not staring at his mobile phone, hoping somebody phones. Surely he's got a lot of plates spinning at this precise moment in time.
You would think so. I mean, the question is whether how involved Dom is in actually the actual transfers of it. It may be the case that he's left it to other footballing departments and said, look, you're in charge of transfers, you get what Ange wants, and he's dealing with other things. As I said yesterday, there's so much needs to change at Celtic, and he's so many department heads needed. If you think of a corporate structure, at the moment it's kind of, you've got some scouts, some coaching staff, you need the layers above them up to the pyramid at the top. So he's got a lot of stuff to fill in, behind the scenes, and it's going to take a while. I've said this before, I think it's going to take months before the behind the scenes structure is in place. How that affects signings is the issue, and that's where he's going to be judged, because ultimately most fans don't care about the behind the scenes. They don't care about the restructure. Behind the scenes, they just want success on the park. And you're right what you're saying. If we don't have a successful transfer window, if we get to the end of August and Ange still has to win a game and he's not got his players in, fans' patience will start to wane. But it'll be Dom Mackay that gets it. You can already see how many people are having a go at Dom Mackay. He's only been in the job since July. So he's got, what I said I think he needs to do is come out and, we've talked about how he's a sort of communication engagement specialist. He needs to do that. He needs to come out, tell the fans, look, this is where we're at. This is the state of play. This is the roadmap. This is how long it's going to take to get there. Trust me, we're getting there. We're taking care of those players. We will get there eventually. Just be honest. Just be open with the fans. That's all we're asking for. Because what he can't do, the mistake he simply cannot make, other than not backing Ange, is not including the fans, not talking to us. Because last season is where a lot of this frustration still lingers at that, that dismissal of the Celtic support. And we've, the Celtic support's done their job. They've got the season tickets in. They've backed Ange. They're all in. They've done their job. Ange appears to be trying to do his job. It's up to Don Mackay. If he's not the one directly involved in the board, he has to make sure and kick the backside to the ones that are involved and get it done. Or else, as you rightly say, the fans will turn on them quickly. And it won't be Ange that gets the blame, it'll be Dom. And that's not how you want to start a job.
I think what we're actually seeing is, I think we're exactly where we're meant to be. I think we're exactly where we deserve to be with the way that the club has been run over the last 18 months especially. But everything that we're doing now is steps to recovery. Even if it's a setback, it's still a step to recovery. Because it might not be with Ange, it might not be with Don Mackay, but the decisions that are getting made now will lead to a brighter future. And it's maybe not round the corner. It could be a year down the line, 2 years down the line. But everything, we just need to embrace what's actually happening and hope it turns out right. I'm sure that the guys sitting on the non-executive board and the board think they're doing an absolutely spiffing job of running Celtic Football Club, and they're going, why are the peasants revolting? Why are the peasants having protests on Sunday? They've delivered 4 quadruple trebles. I've been on about this until I'm long and weary, and I'll keep on going on about it. It's like they're almost complaining now that their house is flooded after fans for years have been pointing out there's a hole in your roof. You need to get this sorted. The only thing that we're world class at is making statements that we're a world class football club, when it's quite simply, when you have a look at the demeanour and what Ange Postecoglou has says and his post matches and his press conferences, that we're nowhere near an elite football club off the pitch. Colin, what do you think? And on the pitch at this precise moment in time, let's not beat about the bush. On and off the pitch, we're nowhere near an elite football club, no matter how many statements the PLC board put out saying that we are a world-class institution.
I just want to pick up on something you said at the start of that there, about the sort of making decisions now which don't seem the wisest, but will be of benefit going forward. And the first one that kind of sprung to mind there was Olivier Ntcham leaving the club this week. Now you look at it as someone who...
Hold on. If you're going to say Olivier Ntcham was uninterested, remember some woke person will tell you that you're being racist. So you need to watch what you're saying about Olivier Ntcham.
Okay, right. Just getting back to what I was saying, Olivier Ntcham's a guy that we turned down bids for about 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, of varying levels, anywhere between sort of 10 to 14 million pounds. We turned down bids for Olivier Ntcham because we expected him to be a big part of the squad, and we thought he'd be the man on European nights, and Lazio away from that, he really wasn't. He wasn't someone that done it. But he's also someone that was sitting on a fairly high wage packet at the club. And it didn't look as if Celtic were ever going to get the bid that they were looking for him. They knew they had plans in the work, especially with McCarthy and Hart. So that kind of acceptance that, right, we've made a pig's ear of this. We should have cashed in well before we did. Let's just agree to disagree, and that's it. The job's done, and he's away. Because he was away in Marseille at the weekend. He wasn't even in Scotland. He was watching the game over there. That allows him to go and develop his career. We can admit that it was a mistake we didn't sell him, but now we move on. And with that signing going out, it's allowed us to bring 2 in. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that it's a case that that's what we need to do going forward, because I'd hate to think that it was the fact that we've got to sell to or release to let players come in. But to fit into the structure, and this goes back to what you were saying there about the guys on the non-executive board saying we're running this club really well. That wage bill that we've managed to shift on. If you're bringing in two guys like McCarthy, who's going to be on a fairly decent wage, Hart, we know, going by the reports, is on 15 grand. That means it's not so much of an addition to the wage budget because you've managed to shift and Cham out of there. So they'll see that financially as a good move. We can scream all we want that these deals should have been done earlier, but it feels as though that every time that we move someone on, we bring someone in. Ayer goes out, Starfelt comes in, and Cham goes out, Hart and McCarthy come in. So they are trying to run it like a business as well, whereas we do need them to kind of look at it and accept that this football team needs strengthened regardless of who's coming in and out. We need to get the guys in. There should have been a budget there. It shouldn't be one in, one out.
And we need strengthening, but we also need decent scouting, because the scouting has failed over the last 4 or 5 years. Well, what do you think, Brian? Do you think that that Olivier and Cham, like, for me, and I've said it on here plenty of times, on his day he was the best midfielder in Scotland by a week. When he turned up, he was the best midfielder in Scotland. Nobody else had in the locker what he could do, but the days became few and far between over the last 3 seasons. The days became few and far between. Games were passing him by. He did look uninterested, and that's the reason why he's went from a £12 million player to a guy who was struggling to get a contract in Greece. And that's nothing to do with Celtic. That's down to the player himself. And I would say that about it's the same. I would say the same about Lee Griffiths. Lee Griffiths is basically ruining his career at this precise moment in time. But luckily enough for Olivier and Cham, is he's young enough to actually turn it round if he wants to turn it round. What do you think, Brian?
It's hard to disagree with either of you have said, to be fair. And I think, one of the problems I think Celtic had last season is we talked a lot about the culture, or the lack of culture. And I think if you've got guys moping about, maybe creating a toxic atmosphere, and I don't know if Olivier and Cham was, I'm just making a wild assumption here, but if he doesn't want to be there and he's starting to get fed up and he's not joining in.
Hold on, I get shouted at and I never even mentioned any of that, Brian.
I know. I'm cancelled. But I think
let's clarify this. Neil Lennon came out and says the guys who were wanting away caused a poor atmosphere in the dressing room. So we all know Edouard, Cham, Christie, Ayer were guys who were wanting away. So
I think in that regard, I think if you're Ange, one of the things I like best about him is he spoke about creating that culture, that joy of playing for Celtic, having a good team mentality. And so I think it probably makes sense, as well as financially, but in the team setup, to get rid of guys like that aren't, contributing. One of the things you mentioned, which makes me panic when you're talking, Colin, about the board and how they view things, or the non-exec board and how they view things about a player in and a player out. I made a point yesterday. It looks like we're doing what you say. I think they're trying to reduce numbers. If they're looking at squad numbers, we've actually got 6 centre halves, which makes me worried that they're hesitant to sanction a move for another until one leaves. 2 right backs with 2 left backs, and Connor Ralston. I know the reality is they're not going to be first team regulars. But if you look at Starfelt, Welsh, Julian, Irigidi, Beaton, Murray, they might go, you don't really need another centre half. Now, we all know we do. But my concern with whoever is doing the transfers is if they're looking at that just purely on numbers and saying we've got Ball and Golly on 30 grand a week, what do you need another left back for? That's a worry. And I don't know if maybe that's caused a delay and maybe that's the frustration where they go, look, we need to get rid of some of these guys. Yeah, but we need to get guys in first. And my concern as we get to the last week of the transfer window, Edward finally goes, Ball and Golly goes, beat them, and then we do this mad scramble to try and get players in. I don't know if there's any substance in that, but it is a concern for me because the areas we've strengthened so far are areas where we're weaker in terms of numbers. Centre half's just an area we're weaker in terms of ability. So it's a wee bit of a concern to me why that's taking so long for some of these to come up. As usual, I hope I'm super wrong and we've got a bunch of players lined up to fit into that. But it does slightly concern me the lack of transfers out of the club as much as the lack of transfers in.
I think what you're saying there, Brian, is the legacy issue of Peter Law. How Peter Law done business and how the Celtic non-executive board see how we do business. It's spend everything we bring in, we put back out. Whereas we're at the point now where we need new players quite quickly. But as you say, they could be actually quite rightly looking at it going, well, we've got Christopher Jullien, who we spent £7 million on coming back sometime in September. Why do we need to go and get another centre-half when we've got guys that can play there? The problem is the guys that we can play there are guys like Near Beaton, who have proven time and time again now that they're untrustworthy in the centre-half position. I mean, with Beaton, you're probably getting one good game in 5. Uragide, he's as raw as a butcher's flare. And he's going to need time. He's going to need time to progress. And this is a problem when you allow accountants to play Football Manager, Colin.
Aye, Football Manager's a great game. I'm enjoying my save at a minute. I'm trying to take Greenock Juniors to the SPL, or the Cinch Premiership, or whatever it's called. We're in League 2 now. No, but there is something to be said about that. The idea of it's not like the Moneyball idea. That's not quite where we're at, although I know there's a lot of people out there that would love Celtic to kind of play that Moneyball idea the way that Brentford do it. It's more a case of balancing the books. And as you mentioned, I think you had a slip of the tongue there, Brian. I don't think Bolly's on 30 grand a week. If he is, we'd have get rid of him a long time ago. I think maybe somewhere in the region of 13 I can understand. But even like that, if he's not going to play again, then it is time to either move him out on loan to someone that picks up the majority of his wages, or you do move him on completely. So you look at the guys that were still meant to be out there for guys like Buta, like the boy Scales from Shamrock Rovers, Christian Lovrich. These guys, is it going to take someone like a Bolly to move out before they actually sanction to say, right, get him in? Because if that's the case, it's not how we're going to work. As you're saying, Kevin, we don't just need someone to come in and be a squad player. We need someone who's better than Taylor, who's better than Ralston to come in. We need someone who's going to score us 25 goals a year. We need to have Eddie's replacement in before Eddie leaves the building. That's the kind of situation that we're in, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. And I honestly think as we get down to the last week or so of the window, that's where you'll probably go and sign 3 or 4 guys on loan, because that's the way that Celtic seem to go.
That's the way it's looking in, and that's not going to come as any surprise to me. And it's just for the reasoning that Colin says there, Brian. It's going to be a financial reason. They are going to pay fractional wages to get guys in on loan, and wherever it is, because I mean Eddie's we didn't look like to be shifting Eddie anywhere. We haven't got his replacement in the building, so you would hope that there's a wedge of cash sitting there for Eddie's replacement. I mean, I'm sure that some of the accountants will probably point out, say, well, we've got Ayeti there. That was Eddie's replacement. But it doesn't work that way, Brian, does it?
No, it doesn't at all. I've said for a while, I actually don't expect Eddie to go in this window. I just get the feeling these clubs that are in from Brighton, I don't think he want to go to Brighton. And I think he'll view it as, well, if I go as a free agent, I can have a pack of clubs anywhere. Whereas maybe nobody's willing to pay 20 odd million for a player in his last year. So he might dig his heels in, he may not go. I don't see him being rushed at the door. But yeah, it's just one of those weird situations with Celtic, like you say, that they're dealing with these legacy issues. And I'm going to say something that might seem contradictory to my sort of long-term structure narrative, but it might be the case we might be better trying to get a couple of loan signings in and basically steady the ship until the proper recruitment structure's in place. Because if we're going by the scout system that was in place last year, which wasn't great, maybe it's better not investing too much in those signings and actually getting players in that can do a job now. They're on loan, you're looking for a season, and then while that's happening, really see there's other scouting in. It's not the way you would want to do it. It's not something I think is a great idea, but I think maybe it's going to be the route they'll actually go down. Because if you look at this, spent a decent amount so far, and given the fact that we're still talking 2 right backs, a left back, a centre half, probably a winger, maybe a striker, in less than 4 weeks to get that in, the big transfer fees, I don't see it. And I think what they do is they'll try and fill some gaps with loan players until such times as they've got this structure in place to keep talking about. I hope it's not a route we go down because it's not very practical and I don't think it fits what we're trying to do. But I think maybe that might be what happens.
Do you know what? Sorry, Kev.
No,
on that,
no, you go.
see, when you look at guys like Joe Hart and James McCarthy, they're guys we'd have probably tried to sign on loan previously. See, after the squads get announced in the English Premier League and it's who's in the 25-man squad and who's not, they're guys that we would normally try and sign on a loan deal. Now we've got them in permanently and we seem to have given them sort of longer term deals, 3-year and 4-year deals. You just wonder if there's other guys out there that Celtic will maybe look to and say, well, now you're available for a cheaper rate, like Joe Hart was £1 million. These are guys that they'll try and target, and when they do get them, they'll nail them down on a deal. The amount of loan deals that Celtic probably put out there in the last couple of years that they wanted to get in permanently but just couldn't afford it. Guys like Elyounoussi, I'm sure Celtic would have loved to have signed him, but instead they had to go with a 2-year loan. Patrick Roberts probably been another. So, but the kind of market's changing. It'll be interesting to see what moves they make in that sense. One player that keeps coming up, and he keeps coming up in the comment section, and I think it's worth discussing, is Kevin Nisbet. That is just that is sight. That is I'm impressed, Kevin. John McGackie saying we'll sign Nisbet when Edouard is sold. I was impressed with Nisbet at the weekend. I've been impressed with him anytime I've seen him. Again, he's someone who would need to up his game when he came to Celtic, because I think he'd do a job in the Scottish League, but whether he would do it in Europe or not is out there. And he's someone that's going to get you 20 goals a season, definitely. For £4 million, if you get anywhere in the region of 15 to 24, Edouard is a very good reinvestment. And on the move for Edouard, what I've heard is that Crystal Palace, they've just signed the guy that scouted Edouard for PSG as one of their main scouts. That's where the interest in that comes from. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't make the move there because of that connection.
Whose News actually makes a great point here, Brian. So far we haven't done any loans. It's not the policy this time. I find that interesting, Colin. I think Patrick Vieira's been given free rein to overhaul Crystal Palace and to use the famed due system. And so Crystal Palace could be a good fit for Eddie. What do you think? What do you think about Kevin Nisbet, Brian? Because Cosmo Macaulay comes in and actually says, "I don't get the clamour for Nisbet. Bang, average." So what's your general opinion on Nisbet?
Again, I suppose it depends what way you're looking at it. If this was a regular season and we were getting into the Champions League group stages, I would be wanting to aim higher than Nisbet. But the reality is, we're not. And it may be the case that, I think he would score goals for us. I think he's probably more reliable and more consistent than what we've got. I'm not saying Kevin Nisbet's a better player than Eddie. I'm not saying that for a second. But attitude-wise, what he might give you is a bit of consistency, a desire to improve, and he can score goals in the league. And if we're honest, the leagues that, that's what we need to focus on, and getting up to speed in the league and getting a challenge going to go. So I think it'd be a good buy. I don't see why it's taking this long to get him in. I think he's probably better than Ayeti, if I'm honest. I don't think there's much muchness between them. I think just Ayeti's a bit sexier, isn't he? Because he came from the English Premier League and he scored goals in European leagues, and no physically calling you, Camden.
No, Brian, I was going to say.
Well, he's not bad, to be fair, but so with a guy like Nisbet, I've said before, I think the first thing we should have done, given the COVID restrictions, was say, look, is there anyone in Scotland we can get in that can do a job for us? Bang, get them in first quickly, build it from there, and then maybe look, further upfield. But yeah, the short answer is I would take him this season, but I can understand why people think we should be aiming higher. So I'm sitting squarely in the fence, is what I'm saying.
iGolf comes in saying Hibs don't want Henderson and Murray. What he's suggesting there is Celtic will probably offer a couple of maybe loan deals or permanent deals for some youngsters that they deem that are surplus to requirements at Celtic. Maybe Hibs wouldn't want Henderson or Murray, but I'm sure they would actually take Lee Griffiths. And this is where I think Lee Griffiths is going to become a bargaining tool. I do reckon that we're going to go to Hibs and I'm not in the know, this is just me and my wild parallel universe here. I reckon we're going to go to Hibs and offer money, Lee Griffiths and Ewan Henderson for Doig and Nesbitt before the end of this transfer window. And that's just me making stuff up. Colin.
I don't think Hibs want Lee Griffiths. I don't understand why they would want him. I mean, yeah, okay, he's been a decent goal scorer, but he's got far too much baggage. I think Hibs have moved on from that. You look at someone like Doig up front. I think Lee Griffiths would be better leaving Scottish football, to be perfectly honest. With the potential return of full houses and crowds for his own career, he'd probably be better going down south. I don't think that will happen. I do get what the point that the person was making there about Henderson and Murray. Hibs aren't in that market anymore. They don't want guys that's just going to come in and develop them for Celtic. They are out there and they're trying to actively add to their own squad. They just signed a striker from the MLS and they're trying to bring that in. He's coming in January, but they're trying to bring him in now for the summer window. I don't see it happening. Celtic will probably have to pay the money, and I mean, you're talking it's going to need to be somebody that goes into that Hibs squad and like benefits them before Hibs will be interested. Maybe it could be someone along the lines of Mikey Johnson on loan. That's the only kind of player I could see as a tool for that.
That's an interesting point. I forgot all about Mikey Johnson. Maybe that says all you need to know about Mikey Johnson. I actually forgot all about him. Well, what do you reckon, Brian? Do you think Celtic would pay, let's say it's going to be circa £6 million for both players? Like, if you're going to Hibs for a joint deal for Doig and Nisbet, you're talking about the ballpark figure could be round about £6 million. Do you think we've got the will to pay that?
I think we've got the funds to pay it. The will to pay it might be a different thing. Doig is an interesting one for me. I've never been. I don't know if I quite get the hype train with Doig, if I'm honest. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe I'm no watching enough. But I don't know if I'd be doing cartwheels thinking he's the answer to your left back problems. To be fair, although is he better than Taylor at the moment?
No,
I don't think there's much of a muchness, and that's my only concern. Like I don't think there's a huge amount between them, and I think if they get someone in, you need to get someone who's head and shoulders above them. But I tell you what, I think £6 million for Nisbet and Doig, that's a bargain, because I think Hibs will be looking for £5 million for Nisbet, to be honest. And I think they'll get it. I think they'll get it off somebody. I just don't know if Celtic will pay that money. And I think that comes down to that snobbery of, he's played for Hibs, why are we paying that money for a player for Hibs when we can get somebody for Spain that costs £5 million and it's a bit more glamorous?
See, for me, I was looking at my notes there that I made during the Hearts game, and the only players, and we'll speak about the European game next, the only players for me from the old school, the old guard, which seem to have settled into Ange's system, are Callum McGregor and Greg Taylor for me. Some of them are looking that they're struggling to actually adapt to it. And for me, spending £4 million on Doig as a left back is, I think the money could be spent better elsewhere. I think Greg Taylor will prove to be a competent enough left back for Celtic, and at this precise moment in time, the £4 million could be spent better anywhere else on the pitch, namely up front. Colin, what do you think?
I think, see the idea of this, he costs £4 million, this guy costs £4 million. That's the way the Scottish market's now going. The Scottish market's starting now to get up to that level. I mean, we saw someone like Scott McKenna, who I didn't actually think was a great player for Aberdeen, but he went and moved for, what was it, £3-4 million he moved down to Nottingham Forest for. The standard is now getting set. Celtic moving players on for 20-25 million. Now it's not just a case of the best player in Scotland goes for 10 to 12 million. He goes for higher. So if we're going to be in that market, we're going to have to pay those prices as well. Just because Doig isn't someone who we think is going to be a great player and he's going to come in and he's going to be first choice. If the market value rate for Doig is £4 million, that's what it is. And it's going to be the same for Kevin Nisbet as well. You've seen teams like Hibs have turned down the deals that they think aren't up to that level before. even teams like St Mirren and Hamilton are getting a lot higher value for what they used to get for the players. We've seen the boy at Hamilton who, Hamilton now being a championship side, they just brought in, was it £350,000 for O'Doffin, who just moved to Rotherham yesterday. A championship side in Scotland getting £350,000 for a player would have been unheard of a couple of years ago. This is the kind of market rate we're playing with now, and the Scottish market used to be somewhere where teams could say, I'm just going to pick him up for £1 million, I'm just going to pick him up. That's not happening anymore. If Celtic are very serious in bringing guys like Doig and Nesbitt in, they're going to have to pay the price, whether that be £6, £7, £8 million. That's just the way it's going to have to go.
Brian, why do you think Celtic haven't dived into the local market just now because of the quarantine rules and stuff? I mean, I can name the guy McGrath at St Mirren, Lewis Ferguson, Nesbitt as well. There's 3 players, Ali McCann at St Johnstone as well. They're 4 guys that jump out to me going, they could probably do a job for Celtic once they settle in. Why are we not looking there just because of the restrictions that we've actually got?
It baffles me because, as I say, that's what I would have done. I would have took Ferguson in a heartbeat. Absolutely, going for the money. But again,
for full disclosure, I would take Ali McCann before him.
Same.
Maybe. I think Ali McCann's a good player as well. I like Ferguson's physicality, but either way, we're making the same point. We've looked at Scotland first. I think regarding transfers, see whatever transfers we make between now and the end of the season, and I said this at the start of this transfer window, they have to be better than what we've got. So if we sign a right back, it can't be a right back that might be good in a couple of years. Let's be a right back that's far better than Ralston, a left back that's far better than Taylor, a centre back that's better than Welsh, or maybe Julian. These are the we need. Whether we get them, is a different story. But I don't see the point of signing. I've said this at the start. I don't see the point of signing project players now because we're not in a position that we need them. We need anyone that comes in the next couple of weeks, regardless of what you're paying for them, it has to be better than what we've got. And we need real quality fullbacks at the moment. That's the gaping thing for me, especially because of the way Postecoglou wants them inside and out and sort of moving all around and shaking all about. But I think you're right about Greg Taylor. I think he's adapted fairly well to Postecoglou's style, but I think he looks like a player that's trying his absolute best. He flourishes a greatness, but is limited. So I think if we're signing players, we need guys that can come in straight away, be better than what we've got, and then see where we go. And my only fear is when it's like this, the boy from Shamrock Rovers, Scales, is it? His name is?
Yeah, name Scales, yep.
I mean, is he going to come in and be better than Greg Taylor right away? I don't know enough about the boy, so I'm generally asking. It seems to me like it's one of those signings we make because he's a good player, just get him in and we'll figure it out later. And that is not what we need right now.
I think if you want to be a European team, then every spot's up for grabs because of the teams that have been put out of the Champions League in the last 4 years. So you've got to say that we can do better in every position. But then you're probably writing off players that could improve. Talking about the fullback position here, Autumn Glow comes in a parallel universe. Kev Taylor is at Liverpool and Andy Robertson is at Celtic winning Champions Leagues. Maybe in a parallel universe, but I'll be extremely happy if Greg Taylor's running about the Champions League for Celtic next year. I'll be extremely happy with that, and I think we all will be. Max Stark comes in. Greg Taylor is just as bad as Ralston. I mean, what I'm going to say about that is I was harsh on Anthony Ralston post-match on Saturday night. I really was harsh when I said St Johnstone didn't want to take him. That's probably not the case. The problem that Anthony Ralston has got with the wider Celtic support and the view of Anthony Ralston within the Celtic supporter is this. 4 managers haven't seen him as Celtic's first choice right back. And the Celtic coaching staff had the chance to make him first choice right back last season and never done it. And now we're seeing him as our first choice right back at our time. And I think that's extremely unfair on Anthony Ralston, who tries like a bear, if nothing else, Colin.
Somebody compared him to Anton Rogan a couple of weeks ago. And I kind of see that comparison. Look, for me, I've already had my say on Anthony Ralston. I don't think anything's really going to change my opinion of him. He looked far better going forward than what he's ever done at the back with his goal at the weekend. They took that extremely well. Look, here's a suggestion to throw out there, and it's someone who I'd love to see Celtic try and make the bid for now before the interest peaks in him. Calvin Ramsey at Aberdeen. He came on against us at the end of last season and was very, very good at right back. At the weekend there, he was outstanding, put a ball in for one of Aberdeen's goals. 19 years old, I think he is, or probably even younger, breaking into that Aberdeen team. If we're talking about the Scottish market, if you can get in there before the bids start coming in at a high level, we might be able to pick someone like Ramsey up. He's not going to be your first choice going into a Champions League or a Europa League game, but he's someone that can definitely develop into that. Whereas Ralston, I don't think, well, he's turning 23 soon. That's, if you're not first choice with 23, you're saying, Kevin, it's probably time for him to move on. Or change position, maybe put him up front.
Again, but the guy for Aberdeen's got a development plan there. He's going to get more games at Aberdeen than what he's going to get at Celtic. That's the whole problem. If my 16, I haven't got a 16-year-old, if my laddie was turning 16 at this precise moment in time and he had the choice to sign for Celtic, I would be advising him not to sign, because there's no development plan in place for young laddies to get into that Celtic team.
Here's the situation though, as it stands, you probably need two right backs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get Ramsey for a decent fee, and then what do you bring an experienced person in there? Buta seems to be the guy that we're going for at the minute. Now, by all accounts, Buta is probably a better player than anything we've got in there at the moment. But even people say, he's weak defensively. They've not even seen him playing yet. I think you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt of bringing them in and actually seeing what's happening. That's
all based on them watching them for Royal Antwerp against Rangers, when they all claim never to watch Rangers games. So that's what that's all claimed to. Kenny 67. Are you better than Greg Taylor, Brian? That question needs answered.
Well, Kenny, I really appreciate the vote of confidence, mate, but I'm leaving a better left back than Greg Wilder. I'm absolutely bogging. I can talk a good game, but I can't play one. So no, thanks for that. See, the interesting thing about Ralston. Ralston, for me, he's the personification of what people see as the problem with Celtic now. People are projecting their frustrations onto Ralston because whenever they see him, they see what's wrong with Celtic now. Lack of planning, lack of proper structure, no the right players in. And I think that's deeply unfair on him because it's not his fault he's in that position. So I think I see a lot of the personal stuff about Ralston, and I think it's really poor because I don't think he's done enough to get the criticism he deserves. Although he isn't going to be Celtic's number one right back, but hopefully moving forward, I think it's a bit unfair, and I think it's only because he's the personification of the problems at Celtic in terms of transfers just now. I don't actually think it's a personal thing, and I don't think he's nearly as bad as people make out. But again, no Celtic class, as we like to say.
He wouldn't be here if we'd had another right back. Celtic would have let his contract go, and he would have probably been at St Johnstone or a Dundee United, or
that's
even maybe
even
the league below.
I think that's why people are seeing him as that position is the problem, and because he's the guy that's filling it now, I think he's getting the slack more than he probably deserves.
I think the genuine fear, but amongst a lot of the fan base, is that we might not sign a right back. He's had a couple of fairly decent performances, and that suddenly puts him up the pecking order. We've seen him for the last 5 years, and he isn't good enough to play for Celtic. A lot of people in the comments maybe saying, well, he's been good the last couple of games, he can put in as a backup. I wouldn't rely on him for a 38-game season. That's why I'm saying you need two right backs in there.
It could be that the Celtic see Urhoghide as one of the coaching staff see Urhoghide as somebody that can fill in at right back if they're absolutely desperate. Kieran Nolan comes in where he seems to have some knowledge of the lad's skills. He says he's a centre back and fills in at right back. Physically is stronger than Taylor, need height at the back. And as Kieran's 67 points out, Dermot Double D has a share in Shamrock Rovers. So there's another link there. We've got a game tomorrow night, lads. He's looking forward to it. Right, Colin, you go first.
I am. First of all, it's a 4:45 kickoff, and it's on Council Telly. That's fantastic. I mean, we've already got like Premier, BT, Sky, everything else, but no, being on Council Telly's a bit of a bonus.
But then we need to put up with Liam McLeod.
Aye, I know. That's what the mute button's for. No, look, it's going to be good. Just finishing work and then straight into watching Celtic, and then if it's disappointing, you're over it by 8:30 because it's an early kick-off. But no, it should be a good game. I'm looking forward to seeing maybe Furuhashi playing. We were in the fan media press conference with Furuhashi the other day, and he said that his preferred role was striker. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits into the side.
I found that quite funny, Colin. He says his preferred role was striker, but Ange has brought him in to play wide.
Well, we'll see what we get out of that.
Brian, are you looking forward to tomorrow night?
I can't wait, aye. And the thing is, Colin, it might be on Council Telly, but you need a TV licence to watch that, don't you, mate? I'm not sure if you've got one.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yes, for Greenock, eh? Yes, for Greenock, eh?
I don't know what to say, but... No seriousness, I can't wait. I'm always buzzing to watch the Celtic, regardless of what shape we're in. I can't help. I always get the butterflies. Really look forward to the game. I think we got a good result, and as always, just want to finish with last message for the Celtic fans. If you're like Colin and I, who always disagree, that's fine. Agree to disagree. Be respectful. Be nice to each other. Everyone's going to support the team. Don't argue amongst yourselves. It's getting ridiculous just now.
I'm going to leave the...
Let's just go with it.
Brian, well, that's everybody's sentiments for ACSOM whatsoever. I'm going to put this comment up with Ryan Kelly, and we're going to leave it here, and we're going to end. So when this is on YouTube, we can come back to Ryan. Ryan, unpopular opinion, Anthony Ralston or Greg Taylor could make it under Ange. If you look at that in the long term, who knows? That's a bit of positivity end on the day. Lads, thanks for joining me for this. It's been fantastic this afternoon. We never really got through what we were going to get through. And look, as Brian says, be kind to each other and come on the hoops. See you all later.
Yeah, well.